Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our virtual community event, Adjusting to the Unknown, Staying Uplifted During Difficult Times. I want to first thank you all for taking the time to join us today, and I hope that you all leave having gained the tools to help yourselves and others navigate through this challenging time. The purpose of this event is to increase awareness of mental health and domestic violence situations, which have increased since the beginning of the pandemic, and also to share how individuals can recharge and recover from them. In addition, we want to share how those affected financially can continue to create and build a financial legacy. We want to bring hope and encourage everyone to never give up, for at the proper time, we will reap a harvest if we continue to persevere. Again, welcome to our event, and we hope you all enjoy.
Let us pray. Dear Father, we're so grateful to you for this wonderful event, Father. Thank you so much for all of our speakers. Thank you for giving them the gifts to share with us, the expertise that they have, Father God, in the fields of mental health, domestic balance, and financial security. We thank you, Father, for our moderator, and we continue to pray that you would bless them in a mighty way. We pray that you would bless all of those who are on this Zoom today, Father, and that you would continue to help each and every one who is in need. All these things we ask in your name we pray. Amen. At this time, I will introduce to you our moderator for this event, Angel Brown. Mrs. Angel Brown is the founder of Angel Brown Speaks. The Angel Brown Speaks is actually a positive and motivational platform focused on development of business leaders, mentorship of future leaders, and training and development of sales teams and sales acumen. Angel launched her business in 2018, and in 2019, after being released from her corporate position as market president for iHeartMedia, she stepped out on faith and began working as a full-time entrepreneur because she knew her value and purpose in life spanned beyond the corporate doors and glass ceilings. Prior to moving to Hampton Roads, Angel managed 5 radio stations in Mobile, Alabama, and 7 radio stations in Albany, Georgia, as Vice President of Sales and Market President at Cumulus Broadcasting. Prior to her career in radio, Angel was Senior Account Executive at NBC affiliate Channel 10. Angel has been wildly successful in the broadcast industry, building lasting relationships over the course of 18 years in multiple states. She is a certified manager in radio industry by the Radio Advertising Bureau. In addition, she graduated from Rising through the Ranks Management Training by the Radio Advertising Bureau, Broadcast Music Incorporated, and Mentoring and Inspiring Women in Radio. Moreover, Angel has been featured in the trade magazine Radio Inc. as a future African American leader in radio in 2014 through 2016 and 2019. Angel is a servant leader who believes in volunteering and mentoring. She has served as broadcast member of United Way of Southwest Georgia and the Sybil Smith Domestic Violence Foundation. Angel spearheaded the National Literacy Campaign under the National Programming Initiative of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. In addition, she has chaired 3 Butillion military events supporting high school males in Albany, Georgia, and Mobile, Alabama. In 2016, Angel was awarded the Power with a Purpose Award in recognition for her work in the community by creating a community Christmas party, providing over 700 toys to underprivileged children in the area. She is a proud member of my sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and has sat in many positions, including social action. Angel has been recognized as a community leader by several pastors and has always been active in her church. She attends Mount Lebanon Baptist Church under the leadership of Bishop K.W. Brown and Mrs. Valerie K. Brown, and she serves as a facilitator of SEED, which is Seeing Evidence Every Day. Angel is a graduate of Loyola University in New Orleans, Louisiana, and she has a master's degree in marketing management from the University of Maryland Global Campus. Angel is married to James Derrick Brown, and she has an 18-year-old son, Anthony Taylor, who is growing into the man that God intended him to be. Angel believes that Anthony is the best part of her, and her greatest gift is that of being a mom. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you our moderator, Angel Brown, founder of Angel Brown Speaks.
Well, thank you, Sarah. Wow, that was a lot. I'm not sure if I'm excited or if I'm like, man, who is that? But thank you very much. I am honored to be here with all of you today and see so many wonderful faces on today's Zoom call. This is an important topic for us, and it really was an honor for me to be asked to moderate this Zoom call, this panel. We have some phenomenal people on this panel that are going to speak to us today and going to empower us and enrich our lives, especially during this time when we are adjusting to our new normals. It is a lot of change that is happening in our lives. And I think we all can agree that change is inevitable, and it's how we respond, not necessarily how it happens. So our responses are much more important. And so today we get to listen to some amazing panelists help us with our responses in terms of our change that's happening in our lives each and every day. So I'm not going to hold you up. I want to make sure that we have enough time for our panelists to speak to us and to impart words of wisdom to us today. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce the very first panelist. If she is ready, Dr. Christy Norwood. Let me give you her bio, and then she will join us and she will share her screen and will definitely give us some wisdom that we're all going to need. So Dr. Christy Norwood, she is a licensed clinical psychologist who currently serves as the director of Student Counseling Center for Hampton University. Dr. Norwood earned her undergraduate degree in psychology from JMU, where she became a proud member of our sorority, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. Following the completion of that degree, she completed her master's in science and community counseling and her doctoral degree in counseling psychology at the University of Memphis. Prior to transitioning to the university setting, Dr. Norwood worked as an assistant chief of psychology at the Hampton Veterans Affairs Medical Center. During that time, she served as a coordinator for the stress disorder clinical team, coordinating the efforts of opening the first women's mental health clinic, which is huge, and served as the director of the postdoctoral training program. Dr. Norwood joined Hampton University in 2019, and she's been instrumental in continuing to educate and enhance mental health services for Student Counseling Center. In addition to her role at the Student Counseling Center, she also serves as the faculty member for the Department of Psychology. Dr. Norwood is married to her life partner, Lester Norwood, of almost 10 years, who you will soon hear from. And she is the proud mother of a 2.5-year-old wonderful young man. As a psychologist, her clinical psychology is embodied by, you may not be responsible for being down, but you are responsible for getting up. She believes that her calling is to help decrease the stigma of mental health and assist others in continuing the path of emotional wellness. Dr. Norwood, thank you for being a part of today's call. We look forward to hearing what you have to say. And so as you share your screen, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Soror Angel, and thank you again to the my sorors of the Denbigh Alumnae chapter just for having this program and for creating a space where we can all come together and talk about mental health and mental wellness. So I'm going to share my screen here. And today, I have the privilege of us really connecting and talking about how we recharge. But, before we talk about this idea of recharging, I think it's important for us to recognize the why behind recharging, right? So we all know the pandemic has brought on just so much stress, so much change for all of us. And in a short period of time, we started wearing masks. We experienced losses. We were inundated by CNN and ABC and CBS with so much data and information that, to me anyway, felt like was constantly changing. We started teleworking for many of us. Some of us still had to present to the office, and we were kind of forced to make these shifts to our entire being, to our entire way that we had been used to functioning. And for many of us, it had impacted our physical health, but it also had a strong impact on our mental well-being. And so when we talk about mental health, it's sort of a buzzword now with the pandemic, but I want us to kind of all be on the same page. So mental health is really just our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. So what does that really mean, though, if we break that down, right? If we put it in its simplest form, mental health is just simply, how are our thoughts?
how are our feelings, right? How are we behaving? And how do these things sort of intertwine to help us live a life that's healthy, to help us live a life that's successful? And, you know, sometimes when we experience just really unexpected changes and unexpected shifts that we have experienced in the last year, not to mention social unrest, political unrest, changes in our environment, Capitol riots, and just everyday stress of just living life, right? When that happens, it can be a complete shock to what we call our nervous system. And our nervous system is really what allows us to pick up cues from the environment. Our nervous system sort of helps to regulate our emotions, and it signals to our body how we're supposed to respond. And so in the past year, we've seen a lot of increase in terms of anxiety, depression, and substance misuse, right? So when we think about this idea of recharging, I just want you all to be able to conceptualize why this is even important. So some of the research has shown that prior to the pandemic, only about 11% of the population shared that they had experienced depression and anxiety. But since the pandemic, the onset of that, those numbers have skyrocketed to about 41%. So that's almost half of our population in the last year who's saying, you know what, I'm experiencing some symptoms of depression and anxiety. And so while mental health has always been important, you know, the pandemic has really allowed us to have some open dialogues about how do we attend to our mental health, how do we prioritize our mental wellness, and how do we really learn some healthy skills to protect our minds and protect our bodies in these times that we're in. And so that's kind of how we got here today, right? That's the spirit of the importance of recharging. And so I encourage you all to think about, have you recharged your battery? Have you recharged or charged at all your battery? So one of my favorite humans on the earth, who I hope to one day be able to meet, our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, she shared a little bit of her perspective on mental health. And I love this quote. It says, "At the root of this dilemma is the way we view mental health in this country. Whether it's an illness that affects your body or an illness that affects your mind, it's an illness, right? It's something that we need to attend to, and we need to honor mental health in our society." She went on further to help us understand that people are watching, right? We are modeling for our children, for those of us who have children or grandchildren or coworkers, or even people that we're just connected to. She went on to sort of share that people are watching, and the way that we take care of our mental health is a way that we can kind of model healthy behaviors for other people. So the pieces that hopefully you'll pick up through our time together today, you can share those with those in your life, right? You can encourage them also to engage in some healthy mental wellness strategies. The last thing that I wanted to kind of honor that I think is really important when we think about mental wellness and the why behind recharging is women, right? And this is not to discount our men who are joining us today, but it's really just to highlight the fact that women in particular, it's so important. We're often caretakers, we're often going from appointment to errands. Oftentimes we become secondary or even tertiary to the other things that we're faced with. And so as former First Lady Michelle Obama highlights, we as women, those of us who identify as such, really need to do a better job of putting ourselves and our own mental wellness higher on our list. So can you relate? I am team iPhone, okay? And I will tell you, when this happens on my phone, I get stressed, right? My anxiety goes through the roof. And I find myself just sort of looking at the phone, kind of like this individual is likely doing, and saying, gosh, when is that little apple gonna show up on my phone? When is my phone gonna actually be charged, right? Or maybe you're like this, maybe you're like, maybe my iPhone's not working, maybe I need to unplug it, unplug my tablet, my Android, and plug it back in, right? Maybe something's wrong. We don't want to get to the point where our batteries look like this. Right? We want to reach a place where we don't wait until that happens, but we're constantly engaging in healthy mental wellness strategies along the way. So our phones, which are synonymous to our own mental wellness are not depleted. So let's talk about how do we do this, right? So the first piece to recognize, similar to our phones, right? I know for me, my phone will say, hey, you have 20%, 10%, right? It tells you over time as that battery life is winding down. And similarly, our bodies and our minds do the same thing. They give us what I'm calling stress warnings, right? So some of them you'll see on the screen here, but I do want to highlight just a few that tend to be common, right? So headaches can be a common sign that you're stressed, you're feeling anxious, right? You might notice muscle tension, right? Maybe you got sort of some cricks in your neck. Maybe you need to stretch a little bit, right? That could be a sign that my mental wellness or my battery is starting to become depleted. Maybe you notice, your heart is racing, right? Or if you scoot to the right side of this slide, you might notice your confidence is shifting. Forgetfulness, right? Sometimes people attribute that to other aspects, age, things of that nature. Forgetfulness can sometimes be a sign of stress. The other big one that you'll see here on the right is sleeping problems, right? We have to get good sleep in order to function. And the quality of our sleep can sometimes tell us a little bit about the state of our mental health and our physical health. So these are just some of the warning signs I want us to take heed to, because when we can recognize these signs within ourselves and within people that we really care about, then we can start to sort of catch some of these sort of triggers or warnings before our battery is depleted. So what do we do, right? So doc, I recognize the sign, my battery's starting to be depleted. What do I do? So there's kind of this buzzword that's out there now, our term, self-care, right? And we're gonna talk and kind of break this down a little bit, but self-care is paramount. What that means is that you are intentionally, right? You are intentionally building in and choosing behaviors that help you balance your emotional stress and that can help you sort of bring life more meaning. There's 8 dimensions of self-care, and you'll see those here on the screen. Just to highlight a few of these, right? Physical self-care. We want to make sure that in order to keep our battery charged, that we are getting, healthy amounts of rest, that we are eating, healthy diets, for example. We're going to talk about psychological and emotional self-care, but these two sort of encompass, what's my motivation looking like? Am I moving forward in life? Am I balancing my emotions? How am I managing stress, right? We want to engage in some activities that are going to help us in this area of self-care. Social self-care. We might think, how do I do this in the midst of a pandemic, right? But being connected, we as human beings, the psychology behind us is that as human beings, we were designed to be in connection with other people, right? So that's why when the pandemic hit, it was so challenging for so many of us, particularly those of us who are extroverts or who enjoy connecting with other people. It was really challenging because the way that we have constructed our social lives has really shifted. And so with that, with social self-care, even in the midst of the pandemic, whether it's a group text message or a family call, or hopping on a Zoom meeting that's sponsored by the Denbigh Alumnae chapter, it's a way to connect with other people and not to isolate. Financial self-care, I won't talk too much about this because I know you all will hear a little bit about this later, but looking at your spending habits, right? Looking at, are you saving, or is there an Amazon box that's showing up on your doorstep every day, right? That could be an indicator of stress. I'm not calling anybody out. I'm just merely saying, right? That could be an indicator of sort of your emotional wellness, right? Spiritual self-care. We want to make sure that, faith is something that's important to you, spirituality, connection with a higher power. You want to make sure that you are encompassing some of those things in your life. And the last two are just your environment and your professional self-care. Our environment can share with us a lot about our emotional wellness, right? Especially as many of us have transitioned to working from home, teleworking, things of that nature. We want to make sure that we have spaces that are clean, that are organized. Spaces where we feel like there's a lot of clutter oftentimes can impact our mental ability to focus, to concentrate, things of that nature. Also, with the environment and taking care of self-care in this area, you also want to make sure, if it's important to you, to connect with nature, recycling, things of that nature, finding ways to be able to be one with the environment. And then the last area that I want to kind of share with you all is just professional self-care, whatever that looks like for you. If you're retired or whether you're working, right? This means that you have clear gifts, you have clear goals, you're setting boundaries so that you're moving towards those aspects of life that are so important for you in a professional realm. So how do we do this? I want to talk a little bit about how we break some of these aspects of self-care down a little bit more specifically. This slide here is going to give us sort of the ways that we engage in self-care, some of the more common ways. And the next slide is going to be some of those ways that we tend to forget. So the first piece is acknowledging the changes. So you want to look for, how am I changing? So some of those earlier signs that I kind of shared with you all, you want to recognize, am I changing? Am I shifting? Are there changes in my emotional state? Are there changes in my physical state? Because that's going to be an indicator that something's happening, right? And we have to pay attention to that because that's going to help us recognize it's important to recharge. Sometimes we're so busy just going from one thing to the next, one Zoom meeting to the next webinar to taking the kids to practice, that we don't take enough time to pause and recognize what's happening in our mind and our bodies. Similarly, we have to recognize, what can my body handle? How much is on my plate? A lot of the times when I'm working with patients, I share with them, is there something you can take off your plate? People say, I don't know, I need to engage in therapy, but it's so hard. I have so many responsibilities. Is there something realistically that you can take off your plate? Is there someone you can say no to? Can you set boundaries in your life, right? There is freedom and power in no. There is freedom and power in saying no. And when you do that, what you're doing is you're saying yes to yourself. So part of this is recognizing, what can I handle, and when do I have too much on my plate that I'm really losing track of me? The next piece is this idea of social connection, right? Which is investing in healthy relationships. And so, I think the pandemic has given lots of us an opportunity to really assess some of the relationships and the connections that we're in. And so you really want to prioritize, is this relationship healthy, right? If I'm connected to Soror Angel and it's not a healthy relationship, then it might be time for me to set that boundary and cut that relationship off, right? And then the last piece, which I think we sort of talk about kind of casually, is resting and obtaining adequate sleep. There's sort of this idea in our society that the more productive you are, then you're reinforced for that, right? But we're not always reinforced for resting. And I hear people say so often, and I'm guilty of this as well, that I didn't do anything this weekend. Well, guess what? That is self-care. Rest is productive, right? It might be uncomfortable if we're not used to getting in touch with our thoughts and feelings and experiencing all that's happening within us, but rest is productive, right? Our phones need, right? Similarly, they need that time to recharge. Otherwise, they won't be functional. Same with us as human beings. If we don't take time to get adequate rest and sleep, we will be no good to ourselves or those around us. So this next list, these are going to be ways, again, to maintain your mental charge. However, these are some of the ones that maybe are a little bit less common. So soothing your senses. And what this really means is taking your mind off of the stressor or what's happening in the environment by allowing yourself to notice what's going on around you with your senses. It could be as simple as, I feel my feet on the floor. I smell lavender in the air. I hear the sound of the wind. I see the sun outside. It's noticing what's happening in the present moment. When we stay in the past and in the future, that is what speeds up the anxiety. That is what causes more stress. But if we can get in touch with, what am I sensing? What's happening in my body? What am I experiencing? Then allowing ourselves to do that will actually decrease the levels of stress And if you think about it in the context of the pandemic, many of us are like, what's going to happen? Are all the schools going to open? Are we all going to have the vaccine? You know, all these questions, right? We're not sort of speeding up that anxiety because we're so busy focused in the present. The next piece is integrating self-compassion breaks. And so what this speaks to is the way that we talk to ourselves. We can sometimes be our harshest critics. We can sometimes say things like, I'm a failure, I'm not good enough, I'll never get that job, I'll never start that business, I should have done X, Y, and Z 10 years ago, right? Maybe it's just me, I don't know. But this happens to us as human beings, right? And so these self-compassion breaks are allowing yourself to speak positive affirmations, positive statements to yourself. There's an idea of, for example, I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan. We had a horrible season, right? But I guarantee you, those men thought that they were going to make it to the Super Bowl, right? Because what they told themselves at the beginning of the season and even ongoing, at least till the end, was positive statements. We can do this, we can make it, right? And so that has an impact on our mood, and it has an impact on our motivation and our functioning. The next piece is don't avoid your thoughts and feelings, right? Relinquishing control. We often think if I'm feeling stress, if I'm feeling anxiety, the automatic response sometimes is people say, don't feel like that. Don't be sad, girl, right? Don't be anxious. Don't be nervous. But I feel that. Can we honor that, right? And that avoidance doesn't work. We think it works, right? But just for a moment, if I were to say to you all, don't think about chocolate cake. Don't think about chocolate cake. Whatever you do, don't think about chocolate cake. Don't think about chocolate cake, a nice, moist piece of chocolate cake. Don't think about that lovely piece of chocolate cake. If I were to poll all of you and ask what happened, most likely one of two things. You thought about chocolate cake and you might get some after this webinar. And probably you found yourself sort of trying to engage in activities to distract yourself. What happens with avoidance, we can substitute chocolate cake for anything. We could say, don't be anxious, don't be anxious, don't be depressed, don't be sad. And that doesn't work. So my challenge to you all for the next 2 points is really allowing yourself to feel your thoughts, allowing yourself to feel your emotions, and to keep talking. There is truly strength in vulnerability. So being able to share, I'm feeling sad today, or I'm feeling overwhelmed, or I'm feeling stressed. That allows your body not to internalize all of the thoughts and the emotions and the stress that you're experiencing. And the last suggestion here is to seek formal mental health care if you need it. I've placed some resources here, and perhaps we can share these as well with the attendees today. So there's resources on my personal website, as well as through my podcast, the Remind You podcast. Therapy for Black Girls is a great network. They have great information and articles. They also have a podcast, as well as a directory, a national directory of therapists who are licensed across the country who are able to provide therapy services. Psychology Today as well has a directory of clinicians across the country and also provides some credible resources. And finally, there's a free, I love free, there's a free app called COVID Coach, which you can download. And that app actually will specifically kind of guide you through exercises and ask you different questions related to anxiety, stress, just overall mental health as it relates to COVID-19. And as I prepare to kind of wrap up for today, I invite you all just to look at this serene picture and practice kind of what we have talked about. We're going to practice for just a moment this idea of self-compassion. So if you will, place your hand on your heart, if you're able to. Place your other hand on your belly, right around your belly button. Notice how the air is entering and leaving your body. And if you would just simply repeat this phrase. Today I vow to be present in all things. I give myself permission to breathe in love. I give myself permission to breathe in gratitude. I give myself permission to breathe in compassion in spite of what may come my way. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you. If you would like to stay connected, please feel free to follow me on social media at Dr. Christy Norwood. I would love to connect with you all, and thank you for your investment in your own mental wellness. Have a great day.
Wow. Was that not amazing or what? I took tons of notes. I'm not sure if all of you did. I know many of you joined in between me introducing Dr. Norwood and in her right now where we are. So I don't know. I hope that you had a chance just to listen to her entire presentation. I took tons of notes. If you have questions, if you want to speak to Dr. Norwood directly, there's a Q&A at the bottom. So make sure that you take your cursor, click on the Q&A and ask that question. We have a couple of questions that I definitely want to ask you, Dr. Norwood. I have to tell you, some of them were just in my own thoughts as I'm sitting here realizing I'm stressed. I need to breathe while I was thinking about chocolate cake, but that's not the point at this moment. No, the chocolate cake thing made me a little hungry, I will tell you. And then I also wrote down self-care. I wrote a lot of self-care, and I realized you mentioned the Amazon box. I can relate. I have a few that come often, and so I felt like retail therapy is self-care. I could be wrong. You can correct me.
It can be, you know, as they say, everything in moderation, right?
Everything in moderation, absolutely. What I can take from this, of course, and I think many of us could, and again, if you have questions, please put them in the Q&A. We'll ask those questions to Dr. Norwood. We'll ask a few, and then we'll make sure that we ask as many as we can throughout this presentation with her. But one of the things that I wrote was, what can I take off my plate? Can I say no? I'm not very good at saying no, and I think many of us aren't, especially those of us who are those self-controlling people, you know, those who want to be successful, who want to really succeed, who want to do great things. We do everything, and we rarely say no.
Absolutely.
So I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
As I sat here and I listened to you, and many of us listened to you, and we put our hands on our hearts and our bellies, and we felt the breath, and we realized we probably have a little bit of stress that we didn't even recognize. So what are some resources, and you mentioned some at the end, but what are some resources that you recommend could help those of us who are struggling with anxiety, depression, and stress in this time?
Yeah, absolutely. I will share with you very quickly that I think what we call mindfulness, which is the art of allowing ourselves to focus on our breath, can be so helpful. When we have anxiety, we often, again, are living in the past or living in the present, of which those things may not happen, right? But we kind of create these ideas of what will happen in the future. And so with mindfulness, we're focusing on our breath, right? We are allowing ourselves to be present, and then we're actually enjoying the moment, right? So sometimes we don't realize it was 70 degrees 3 days ago, right? But if we're so anxious, we're just focused on what's happening next. And so engaging in breath exercise, and you can do that, again, I love free. You can do that while taking a shower, right? I'm noticing the water on my body. I'm noticing the water that's cool today. I'm noticing how I'm feeling my breath in the shower, right? Or even while you're eating, things that we do every day. There's also an app free called Calm that can be really helpful, and they guide you through some meditations as well. But the key piece, I would say, Sora Angel, is to make sure that you're doing it intentionally and you're building it in, because if you don't build it in, it's likely not going to happen. And so carving out that time to be able to practice those exercises can be really helpful.
Thank you for that. There is a question that I definitely want to see if you can work on while we go through the rest of this Zoom. And that is there a way to get a copy of your affirmation that you gave to us at the end?
Absolutely. Yes, I can share that, and hopefully we can disseminate that to everyone. I have no problem with that.
Wonderful. Follow-up question, self-care, self-awareness, how do they relate?
Yes. So I would say self-awareness leads to self-care, right? So if I don't recognize some of those triggers, if I don't recognize what's happening within me, my mind and my body, then I'm not going to necessarily know that I need to engage in self-care. The other piece is with self-awareness, we learn to value our minds and our bodies, right? So when we value ourselves more, then we want to take more care of ourselves, of our minds and our bodies. So I would say self-awareness then leads to self-care.
Gotcha. And then a final question for you before we move on, because you have so many nuggets and information that many of us have appreciated. I know I have for sure. One that's being asked is first a very informational and outstanding presentation. Thank you, Dr. Norwood, for that and for the powerful messages. How to really balance is the question. How do we really balance self-care in a very demanding professional environment?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I would say is that's a really difficult thing to do. It's something that I think a lot of us that are professionals sort of struggle with, right? How do we do that? I think one of the things you have to do is to take intentional breaks, right? So what happens in various professions is you usually get, you might get a 30-minute lunch and 2 breaks or an hour break for lunch. But then what do? I know for myself, I might say, oh, I can squeeze a patient in there, or I can, catch up on my email. And so what we have to do is protect that time that we're given. The other piece is most jobs give you leave, right? You don't have to be on your deathbed to take leave, right? You can say, I need to stay home and I just need to be in the bed. I need to send the kids to school and I need to take a break. I promise you, what I've had to learn is that if I were to leave any job, right, my current job or my past positions, they would mourn, oh, Dr. Christie is gone, but they would move on. Right. And so you can't show up for your job if you're not the best version of yourself. And so you have to really build a schedule where you are prioritizing you, where you're engaging in self-care. Right now, in professional job, I'm looking at a screen all day and I'm like, oh my goodness, I realize how much I don't walk during the day. And so even if it's 5 minutes, the weather's getting ready to break where you can walk outside, that'll allow you to not be irritable with that coworker, right? That will allow you not to look at a screen, right? Even if you need to use your leave just to take a mental wellness break, or if you need to make sure that you're creating your time. So at 5 o'clock, I know for me, when I was going to the gym, I would schedule classes at 5:30. So I knew I had to leave on time, right? There was probably more work I could do until midnight, but I scheduled that self-care so that I could make sure that I prioritized me as opposed to the job. So those are just some sort of quick suggestions of how to do that while, being a professional.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much. If you have additional questions for Dr. Norwood, please put them in the Q&A. We will circle back and get some of those questions answered. At this time, I think I'm going to turn it over to Sarah Clemens because I believe she has some pretty cool stuff planned for us. I do believe she has some fun stuff planned for us.
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do.
So at this time, yes, I do. At this time, we have some gift card giveaways for those of you who are on this call today. We're so grateful to you. And I have here, hopefully you can see me, all of you all who have registered and are in attendance for this event today. I'm going to give away the first gift. 10 lucky winners are going to win a Kroger grocery store gift card. So let's pull these winners and see who they are. The first person is Kamika Cradle. That's Kamika Cradle. The second winner is Ebony Nickens. That's Ebony Nickens. The third person we have is Sharon Slaughter. That's Sharon Slaughter. The fourth person, Melanie Jones. Melanie Jones. The fifth, Cynthia Pugh. Cynthia Pugh. The sixth one, we're almost there. We have Ebony Hankins Worthy. Ebony Hankins Worthy. The 7th, Carlin Lucas. Carlin Lucas. The 8th, Tamara Smith. Tamara Smith. The 9th, winner is Kelsey Johnson. Kelsey Johnson. And the 10th winner for our Kroger gift card giveaway is Cindy Melson. Sydney, Melson. All right, so congratulations to our 10 winners of the Kroger gift card giveaways. After this Zoom, I will be emailing you all to talk to you about how you can receive your gift card, how you will receive it. So thank you so much.
Congratulations. Thank you, Sarah Clemens. Congratulations to all of you who won. That's pretty exciting. Did you even know you were getting a Kroger gift card today? Probably not, but so you should be excited that you did. I'm excited for you, and I will be more than happy to send you my grocery list at the end of this call. So we're going to move on to our very next speaker. I am extremely excited and proud of what she is accomplishing. Mrs. Sanu Dieng. She's a motivational speaker. She's a facilitator, and she's an agent of social change. Her bio reads that growing up in a home witnessing violence and overcoming her own intimate partner violence, Sanu Dieng found the tools and courage she needed to take back her life. She is now dedicated to educating the community about intimate partner violence. Her area of expertise includes community organizing, developing community collaboration, strategic planning, and fundraising. She is currently the executive director of Transitions Family Violence Services, a 501c3 in Hampton, Virginia. She's serving victims of intimate partner violence. She started with the organization in 2010 as the primary prevention coordinator and quickly assumed positions around court advocacy, community engagement, and fund development. Her focus began engaging the community in Transitions' mission to build healthy families on the Virginia Peninsula. She speaks with communities throughout the 7 cities and partners with other organizations. She spends time listening to the concerns of individuals and families to identify strengths and areas of improvement for service coordination. She's also working on changing systematic policies and procedures with community partners in the area to address the needs and the concerns of those experiencing abuse in our community. Sanu has been invited on several occasions to represent her district for state and national legislation to support increased funding and/or policy change to benefit survivors of abuse. She's frequently quoted as an expert on our topic of intimate partner violence. She has been honored by her work by the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance, receiving the Hope Award. She's also recognized by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center, receiving the Visionary Voice Award for her groundbreaking prevention programs and initiatives. She is a proud graduate of Hampton University and is affiliated and involved in several organizations, including the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence Board. She's a member of the Virginia Sexual and Domestic Violence Action Alliance Training Institute and Public Policy Committee, Hampton Family Violence Prevention Council, Kiwanis Downtown Hampton Club, Women of Color Caucus of Virginia, Women of Color Network, and the United Way Virginia Peninsula Women United. So I am excited to introduce Ms. Sanu Dieng. I'll let you now take the floor as you share your screen with us and tell us more about all the amazing accomplishments and things that we can do in this area right now in this environment as we're adjusting to the new normal. How do we not only support ourselves, but support others?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Angel, I'm sorry. And I also just want to thank the Denbigh Alumnae chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated for having me. And I also want to give a special shout out to the Newport News Alumni chapter, some of my line sisters on the call. Thank you for being here. So let me pull this up and hopefully won't have any. Okay, so there's no doubt that 2020 has been the most challenging year for us. COVID-19 forever changed our lives, communities, institutions, and our economy. This pandemic made us face social ills and disparities that we either chose to ignore or were too busy with our day-to-day routine to really process what was happening in the lives of individuals around us. And it allowed us to really lean in with curiosity to know how people were suffering in our communities. And so today I want to talk about what COVID-19 taught us about domestic violence. So as Dr. Norwood was talking about being inundated with news and current events during this pandemic, there were a few things that bubbled up to the surface that we had to face as a community. We had to talk about racism. We had to talk about systemic oppression, housing disparities, need for livable wages, access to quality healthcare, food insecurity, homelessness, and unemployment. And for us here on the peninsula and at Transitions, the constant conversation during the pandemic was domestic violence and intimate partner violence. And so for some of the individuals that we serve, they succumbed to these things and dealt with several different of these issues in addition to their domestic violence. And some of you maybe have experienced some of these issues as well, or know some loved ones or family members. And so I want you to know that during this pandemic, and we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary, we're surviving this. And throughout this presentation, you're going to hear me refer to victims of domestic violence as survivors, because it takes a lot to endure that kind of abuse, but also want you to identify as survivors of this pandemic, as we know that globally we have lost many people to COVID-19. So even today, even though we're not past these issues by far, we have a better idea of its prevalence and the need for solutions to help those most vulnerable who live in these forms of a pandemic every day. And so as a survivor of domestic violence and an advocate, I've struggled to help others understand how consuming and challenging it is for domestic violence survivors to make that decision to leave, let alone just live in the situation of domestic violence. And so as I reflect on the pandemic that each and every one of us experienced, there are some common shared feelings between what the pandemic did for us and also how survivors of domestic violence feel on a continuous basis. And so I want to share a few of those with you, because so that we can see some of the similarities. Often we hear when we go out in the community, I would never find myself in an abusive relationship. That couldn't be me. I don't understand why they stay. But there's a lot that goes into the decision to leave. And as we know that sometimes that's the most dangerous time for a survivor. But during the pandemic, there were some feelings that I just want to highlight, again, that'll help you identify with how survivors feel. So concerns of personal safety. So for many of you, you were thinking about, if I go outside, am I going to contract COVID? What is that going to mean for just my well-being, my health, the health of my loved ones, my children? And so we all felt that immediate threat of our physical well-being, but then also just emotionally, the turmoil that we felt about what could happen as we turned on the news and we watched people, have to be on respirators and have some long-standing symptoms of COVID-19. And so for survivors of domestic violence, personal safety is always on the forefront of what they're thinking about, and also to their just emotional well-being as well. We also have the fear of the unknown. And so for COVID, many of us still don't know what the future lies. It looks like it's getting a little bit more hopeful as vaccines are being rolled out and things are starting to open up and cases are going down. But we still have a fear. We don't know what will happen. We don't know if the second strand is going to cause, another wave of a pandemic. And so for survivors of domestic violence, there's a fear of the unknown of what will happen if they stay in this relationship? What will happen if they leave this relationship? How will they survive? What will their family and friends say? Some of the survivors that we've served, they're concerned about the relationships that will be lost if they end a relationship. And so that fear of the unknown is huge. Also, isolation. And we can all relate to isolation because with the shelter in place orders, we had to stay home. We had to disconnect from people physically. It did inspire us to try to connect virtually and by phone. But for many of us, we were isolated with limited contact. And so for survivors of domestic violence, this is constant. They are limited with their communication with loved ones, or there's no contact. For some survivors, they've been completely displaced and moved, whether they came here because we are a transit community due to military or other reasons. And so the isolation, as many of you know, especially if you're an extrovert, it impacted the way that we feel about ourselves, our ability to, share our feelings and concerns with loved ones, and also for our loved ones to pick up on some things that may be happening with us that we're not aware of because we're just in the day-to-day of just trying to survive and get things done. And so isolation is a huge barrier for our survivors as well. And then you have stress and anxiety. Olive, like Dr. Norwood was talking about, the stress and anxiety of just the pandemic and how that may manifest in our professional life or in our personal life. And so for survivors, we see that, it's extremely stressful to be in a relationship with someone who claims to love you and care about you, but is mistreating you. And that may lead to increase in tobacco use or alcohol use or other substances just to cope with what's happening in the relationship. But we also know that we saw that also during the pandemic as well for individuals. Feeling trapped. And not knowing what way out. I'll personally say feeling trapped about when is this pandemic going to be over and when can I get rid of this mask? For survivors of domestic violence, sometimes there's no way out. There's no end in sight when you don't know what's available to you. And so, you struggle with who can I trust to help me? Who's going to understand? What are my options? And how am I going to get past some of these barriers? And another shared feeling that I'll highlight is gaslighting. And this is huge for many of our survivors who are trying to come to terms with the fact that they're in an unhealthy relationship. But for us going through COVID-19, we heard things like COVID's not real. We don't have to wear a mask. The pandemic is not that bad. Although we were seeing people losing their lives and the numbers going up around the globe of people being impacted. And so for survivors, the constant question is this really happening? Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I can continue to endure this. And so as we just think about some of the emotions that we felt during the pandemic, I want you to just think about the impact that had in your household, in your workplace, and just how stressful that was and the decisions that you had to make on a daily basis surrounding some of these issues. And that's what survivors of domestic violence have to do every day. They unfortunately are dealing with a pandemic within a pandemic. However, it's the pandemic that they consistently deal with in their home by someone who claims to love them and care about them. So to talk about just some of the trends that we saw in our area, we saw a lot of new cases of domestic violence, people that had not experienced it before, experiencing it now. We know that there was a lot of tension in households, getting to really know your partner on an intimate level, being around them 24/7. But we did see some new cases rise up. We also saw increases in lethal cases involving extreme physical violence and strangulation, which is a felony here in Virginia and can cause long-term harm. We saw barriers to contacting victim service agencies. Survivors struggled to find a moment to make a phone call. I remember when we had shifted our hotline and decided that all staff members were going to be taking calls because of the amount of calls that were coming in. I spoke with a survivor who actually had to take her child to the hospital just to make a phone call to say, I'm enduring abuse in my home and I don't know what my options are. I don't know what to do. But the safest place for her to make that phone call was from a CHKD. She couldn't make it at home. She couldn't make it at work because she was on the clock and didn't have a moment to do that. And even just talking about the intimate details of the abuse that she was enduring. So we saw that there were barriers for folks to contact us, and really had to get creative as an organization to see how we were going to disseminate the information about the services that we offer, the fact that we were still open and not shut down. Our community advocate, Ms. Daryl Brown, along with our Latinx advocate, Malika Brooks, were going out with the food bank and distributing food, but also having a conversation of, are you safe at home? Do you need services? How else can we help you? What barriers are you facing? So we really had to get creative with how we were talking to community members about us, and then also just spreading the word around Hampton Roads that we are still here and available. Another trend that we saw was human trafficking was on the rise and still is. We saw a lot of familiar cases where family members were trafficking other family members. And this was due to the economic strain that was happening globally, and also just exploiting the body and labor of another person in their family. And so as an organization, we've really started looking at what is our responsibility to address this issue and how do we best serve this vulnerable population, as Hampton Roads as a region is #2 in the state of Virginia for highest cases. And then, unfortunately, we saw fatalities. During the first 3 months of the pandemic, we saw 2 fatalities within the same week in York County. And we know that this is always a possibility. We always strive to encourage survivors to speak with us, to process with us, to plan with us for their safe exit. But we don't quite catch everyone. And so we did see the fatalities increase. And then we also had one in Newport News, a young lady that worked at Target as well. And so those are the things that we always try to avoid, but these were some of the pressing trends that we saw around domestic violence. So you may be asking, how do I help a friend that's going through this? I hate to say it with confidence, but I guarantee that you know someone, whether you work with them or they're a family member or an acquaintance or someone in a civic organization with you, is struggling with being in an unhealthy relationship, whether it's emotional or it's physical, it's financial. They are experiencing some form of unhealthy relationship. As we know, 1 in 3 women will experience domestic violence in their lifetime. And so some of the things that you can do is, we know that we have to educate the community to be an extension of ourselves. We're not always the first person to know about the violence. We know that it's someone that is very close to that person. Is believe them, believe what they're saying. Oftentimes we hear, I told my parent, I told my faith leader, I told my best friend, and they didn't believe that my partner was capable of that, or they couldn't believe the heinous things that I was saying. And so the first step is to believe a survivor that's telling you their experience. Don't minimize it. Take the time to really understand their experience. Secondly, listen. Most times we want to jump in and we want to talk about our own experience and what's going on in our life. And for a survivor to even engage in conversation and start to open up about something that is so hurtful and so traumatic and so intimate for them, give them the room and the space to do that, because in their home, there's no one listening to their needs. And then acknowledge the harm and empower them. And so again, acknowledging that no one deserves to be abused. No one deserves to be called out of their name. No one deserves to be put down in a relationship. We all have to give each other grace, and we're all learning to be better communicators and in better relationship with our partners, but no one deserves to be harmed emotionally or physically or financially. And empower them and let them know, how resilient they are, and although how hard this is, that they are still surviving, and just really affirming them, because they're not getting that. a lot of our work at Transitions, when we offer our trauma therapy and our support group, is really helping survivors to undo that unhealthy talk that they're hearing, that someone is implanted in them to tell them about their self-worth, that they're not valued, that they can't do anything right, that they're not a good parent, that they're not worthy of their existence, that they're have nothing to contribute. And so we work with them to really write over that that language, and to really tell them something different, and to help them see the better parts of themselves, and to also be gracious with themselves, to know that we're all striving to do better. And so that empowerment is a huge piece. And then respecting their decision. And so this is the hardest part, that once someone has opened up to you and they've divulged what they've experienced in their home, and you are, ready to advocate for them and to tell them to leave that situation, you are here for them, and they say, I'm not ready yet. And for us, we don't understand. We're perplexed. We're saying, this person is harming you. Just leave, just pick up with your kids and leave, just move to a new city. But for survivors, there's a lot that they have to take into consideration. There's a lot of risk involved with that decision to leave, even the risk to stay in that relationship. And so, we find that it takes 7 to 10 times for a survivor to leave an abusive relationship for good. And we know that it's only that high because every time that they leave, it's not on their accord. They're leaving because someone else has told them they had to leave. They're leaving because someone threatened to say, if you don't leave, I don't want to hear about this anymore. If you don't leave, you can't stay with me. And so when we really start to respect the autonomy of survivors, and I understand how hard it is, and let them know that we are still there, the line of communication is still open, that you still want to know more, that you still stand with them. Respecting their decision allows them to start to take ownership of what they want to do in their life and what they want to see, because they don't have that at the moment. Someone else is exerting power and control over their actions, over the things that they can do. And so that piece is really important. And then refer to community resources. Transitions Family Violence Services, we are always here. We're here 24/7, and I will share our hotline number after this. But reaching out to community partners to find out what options are available. For many survivors, it's not just as easy as thinking about their personal safety. Sometimes they have to think about their financial stability. They have to think about whether they can get a transfer for work. They have to think about whether their housing will be secure. They have to think about how their kids are going to react to this, changing to a different school district, or staying in that school district and having maybe a longer commute to school, or what that might mean, moving from a place that they call home to moving into an emergency housing program or shelter. And so referring to community resources just helps to have the conversation to know what options are available. And we know when we know more about what's available, then we're able to make better informed decisions to empower us. And so another thing that COVID taught us is that we are better together. I want to thank each and every one of you, especially the illustrious women of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, that assisted transitions, family violence during this time. There were so many organizations and businesses and faith communities that rally behind the work that we do. And we know that we could not have done it without them. As we watched across the country, businesses close their doors and nonprofits stop offering services, we were fortunate to continue to still stand and be your domestic violence agency. And so some of the things that helped us during the pandemic was normalizing the conversation about domestic violence. We didn't keep it that dirty secret that's happening in the home. We started to bring it out to the forefront. We want to talk about this. And the more that we normalize it, it allows people to have the conversation, and it takes and sheds the shame off of being a survivor and knowing that we understand. And then also checking on your loved ones, even your strong friends. Transitions took some time to just reach out to some of the organizations that we work with, and also encouraging community members that someone may not be able to get in contact with you and tell you what's going on. So go ahead and reach out to that person to find out what's happening in their lives. And then getting involved. And so for many organizations, they donated in-kind items to us or monetary donations, but then also just calling our 24-hour hotline number to be empowered with knowledge and information, that if that person didn't have that moment to be able to take down our phone number and contact us, how can we empower community members to be an advocate, to be an agent of social change, to know just enough to be able to help that person make an informed decision to get to a safe situation. And so we found ourselves doing a lot of education online, education on our 24-hour hotline, and processing with loved ones so that we could really spread ourselves in the community through individuals and those that were compassionate about solving the problem. And also, I'd like to add, just for survivors of domestic violence, if they're on this call or if it's someone that you know, I can't speak enough to the importance of empowering them and affirming them that they don't deserve to be abused. When so much is going on around us, it's easy to say, well, at least I haven't contracted COVID-19 or I haven't lost someone. And we start to compare our trauma and our hurt and our pain. And it's all equally valued and important and deserves attention. And so talking to survivors about not deserving to be abused, letting them know that they are worthy of love, of healthy love, and that we understand. We truly, as a collective, I believe, understand now what survivors of domestic violence go through, because we have felt some of these feelings and these challenges throughout this pandemic that's coming up on a year. And so even with that, we know that there's a very hard decision to make. It's very hard for someone to make the decision to leave someone that they thought that they were going to have their happily ever after with, they have children with, they've been with them for an extremely long time. It is one of the most important decisions that they will make in their life, and it will change them forever. But knowing that, however hard the situation is, that they have survived for so long, and they will continue to survive after they leave this relationship. So I want to leave you with our information. This is our 24-hour hotline number, but I also want to encourage you to visit our Facebook page at Transitions Family Violence Services. We've pinned to the top a resource that we've put out continuously throughout COVID-19 of resources and available services for our agency, as well as in the community. If someone is dealing with legal issues or housing barriers, if there's need for food, if they're experiencing food insecurity, as we know that there are multiple issues that individuals are dealing with on top of domestic violence. And so I hope that COVID-19 goes away at some point and it subsides, and it will be a relief to all of us. But I also want you to remember that as we take in that deep breath of relief that COVID-19 is over, there are still thousands and hundreds of thousands of people that are experiencing intimate partner violence that will continue to deal with that pandemic in their home. And so please be vigilant, listen out for those calls, be compassionate, and just be there for them. Because truly we are better together, and I know that we can eradicate domestic violence if we all find our peace in creating peace in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanu. That was absolutely amazing. And I have to tell you, I started rocking in my seat and moving a little closer to my camera, because just to hear some of the correlation, I think, between COVID and domestic violence. I don't know if we really put those two together, at least I didn't. So to hear you talk about being inside and us saying, being, walking out and not really being comfortable with our health, and realizing that that's the same thing that many who live in that situation live in daily. It was really powerful and impactful, and it definitely impacted me. Isolation is a big one. And so having the privilege to have sat on a board where we supported those in that situation of domestic violence situations really speaks to me. So I do appreciate the conversation and the questions. Again, you are more than welcome to put questions in the Q&A for Sanu Dieng. We will get to as many questions as we possibly can. I think there are a few questions here already, so I'll go ahead and say one. There's as it was just mentioned, there was the parallel between abuse survivors and the experience with the global pandemic was definitely appreciated. There's a great question. What services are there for men? I know that when I've sat on different boards, there's been discussion about, women and men and really the funding that HUD has provided for organizations, but they had to accept men as well. So what are the domestic violence resources that are out there to help men in those situations?
So Transitions Family Violence Services serves men. We serve women, we serve men, we serve those that identify as LGBTQ, and the same services that are available to women are available to men. So we serve men that have children, that are engaging in counseling services, that are in need of housing, that want to safety plan, that need to know what their options are with court or with custody. We are here to assist them the same way that we would assist any survivor. We really look at the individual as well as the family unit and what is best to keep them safe so that they can live a life free from violence.
I really appreciate you sharing, and I wrote it down, it's no longer a dirty secret, that this is not something that we need to hide behind closed doors. We need to talk about, we need to share. There is no shame anymore, or there shouldn't ever have been shame, but there is no shame. So if you do have, or if you know of someone who is in this situation, please reach out to Sanu and her team so that we can help. We all have to help. It takes a village, right? Family, it takes an entire village. And so it's really important. Another question, what makes Hampton Roads #1 highest for domestic violence in Virginia?
So Hampton Roads is #2 in the state of Virginia, and it's because we're such a transient community. We have a little bit of everything here. And so with the corridor of 95 being here, it makes for easy access to move individuals across state lines and through different localities. We also have the military here as well, and there's a lot of movement there. So the Hampton Roads area just has a little bit of everything in it. Is really a melting pot compared to many other parts of the state that allow for this to be a place where human trafficking happens so frequently. And so we work with the Hampton Roads Human Trafficking Task Force, which is a collaboration with the Attorney General's office, as well as Department of Homeland Security, in identifying these cases and looking at sex and labor trafficking as well. And so we are trying to combat it best possible and really looking at the increase in human trafficking among our youth. And there is a gap in services there that we are working on. Sorry, Angela, thank you.
That's all right. I'm now unmuted. So again, if we know of someone, if we are in that situation of a domestic violence situation, or if we know of someone who is facing domestic violence, and you mentioned it physically or emotionally, what do we need to do? What's the first thing that we should do? Is that reaching out? Is that reaching out to you? What's the best thing for us to do to help?
The best thing to do is, if you're talking to that person, is to listen. Listen to their experience. But I would say calling our 24-hour hotline, 757-723-7774, or even communicating with us on Facebook to get more information about how to empower that individual. And I think the more that you know, the more comfort and ease that you can give that individual to be able to reach out to us. And really advocate for them, while they make that really tough decision. So I would say empower yourselves with the information. We want you all to be, agents of change and to know about this issue and to know about the cycles and what it looks like. Again, getting rid of that shame, but also being well equipped and prepared for when that person has that conversation with you.
Awesome. There are 2 questions that just came in, and they are very, very important questions. So I definitely want to take a moment and ask you these. Teen dating violence. You mentioned trafficking, but what are the resources or what can you share with us about teen dating violence?
Absolutely. So February is actually Teen Dating Violence Prevention Awareness Month. And we have a youth and family advocate that works with our young people in schools, in community that have experienced dating violence and violence, but we do see that where, you know, not just in high school, but in middle school, we have young people that are reporting physical violence by a partner. And we know that domestic violence is a learned behavior. Hurt people, which for us as an organization, we know that there are some unhealthy households that we have here in our community, and some parents that we need to engage in discussion so that we can break that cycle of violence, because then it becomes generational. We learn to normalize what that relationship looks like. And also, you know, with our young people, media plays a huge role in influencing their culture and how they behave and how they engage. And so I think we also need to really look at how we glamorize, you know, making up to break up and the drama in relationships, and really do, you know, some media education with them to say that's entertainment, but that's not a healthy relationship. This is what a healthy relationship is. It's not where someone wants to be possessive over you and jealousy is at the forefront. So it's really looking at the foundation in which we teach our young people how to have relationships to break that.
I think that also applies to our local school students, which was also a question that was asked. So is domestic violence only partner violence, or can it be family violence, kids to parents or sibling to sibling?
Absolutely. So under the statute of Virginia, domestic violence involves those that are married, whether that is the same-sex relationships are included in that as well. We also have people that may have a child in common. It can be mother to daughter, father to son. It can be a cousin. Anyone that's in that family relationship would fall under the dynamics of domestic violence. So when we talk about intimate partner violence, it's the same thing, but there seems to be a stigma around domestic violence that you have to be married to be experiencing that, but the statute does cover all of those different relationship types.
Perfect. Thank you for sharing that. So we want to always support those who may be in a domestic violence situation, but it's important that we also support those who have those resources to support those. So how do we support you? What resources do you need, or does your organization need at this time? How can we help?
So Transitions, if you follow us on our website or on our Facebook page, we're constantly putting out in-kind donations that go directly to clients that we serve, whether they are starting new and moving into a new place, or it helps us just to maintain our facilities. We always are in need of monetary donations. We help our survivors with a plethora of expenses, whether that is repairing their vehicles so they can continue to get to work, or paying off a bill that's causing a barrier to getting stable housing. And so in-kind donations just help us continue to do the great work that we're doing, as well as keeping our services free of charge. All of our services are free of charge. And so that has been, over 40 years, our practice, and we would like to continue doing that until we can eradicate this issue. And I can tell my staff we can go take care of another social issue, because we really believe that we can end this if we all get involved. So those are some ways. And then also just volunteering your time, sharing your talents and skills and passions with us, and engaging with survivors. It really makes a difference for them to know that people are invested in their well-being and will take the time out of their busy schedule to do resume building, or to make sure that they're physically fit, or to care for their children. It makes a difference to know that you're in a community that cares.
Wonderful. Well, we thank you so much for speaking with us today. You've definitely given us a lot of information and a lot of things that we need to digest, and the resources that we need to help, and not only help those who are in that situation, but also help those who are helping those in that situation. So thank you for your service, your work, and always giving back and being a social agent of change in the community. So thank you again. At this time, we're going to transition over. I'm going to give it back to Sarah Clemens, who's going to give more gift cards.
Yeah. All right, so this time around, we're going to have the gift card giveaway, and the card that we're going to give out today at this particular time is a gift card to Chick-fil-A. So let's pick our 10 lucky winners for the Chick-fil-A gift card. Let's see here. We have John Renee Whitehead. John Renee Whitehead. The next winner is Margaret Marble Howard. Margaret Marble Howard. Our third winner is Karen Williams. Karen Williams. Our fourth winner is Alethea Ashton. Alethea Ashton. Our fifth winner, Princess Walls. Princess Walls. Let's shake it up really, really good here. Our sixth winner, Rochelle Kifcart. Rochelle Kifcart. Number 7, Lacindra Nightnor. Lacindra Nightnor. Number 8, we're almost done. Number 8 is Alexandria Smith. Alexandria Smith. Number 9, Elaine Dillard. Elaine Dillard. And our final winner for today is Brittany Powell. Brittany Powell. Congratulations to our gift card giveaways for today. And congratulations to those who won our Chick-fil-A gift cards. And enjoy your lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah Clemens. So we've talked about cake. We talked about Kroger. We talked about Chick-fil-A. I don't know about y'all, but I'm getting hungry. But before we all stop and eat, we have our final speaker who I definitely want to spend a little bit of time with today. I'm excited to talk to him because personal finances is, well, you already heard me talk about my retail therapy. So I probably need to hear from Mr. Lester Norwood just as much as I heard from his wife, Dr. Christy Norwood. Mr. Lester Norwood is a personal finance representative who is currently serving as the president of Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services located in Newport News. He has a master's degree from the University of Memphis. Also, while at the university, he was initiated into the magnificent Xi Zeta chapter of Omega Psi Phi. In addition to having his MBA, Lester is also following financial license, has the following financial licenses: Securities Series 6, 63, 65, and 26 license. And for the past 10 years, he has put those licenses to work in the insurance and the financial industry. He is as a business owner or a sales leader with Allstate. Lester's work is all about creating and protecting a legacy for his clients, his team, his community, because often, all too often, African Americans are underrepresented in the financial sector, and the financial literacy is one of the keys to our success. Mr. Norwood, welcome. Thank you for being on with all of these beautiful ladies in red. I'm sure you don't mind at all.
Not at all.
But we are excited to have you. And I'm going to now turn it over to you so that you can share your screen and give us some information regarding finances.
Okay, well, I am sharing my screen now. Thank you all so very much for having me. Hopefully I can play this from the beginning without too much of a problem. And there we go. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Lester Norwood, and I am the president of Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services. We are an Allstate agency located right here in Denbigh, Jefferson and Denbigh, as a matter of fact, where protecting and creating your legacies are calling. I am married to Dr. Christy Norwood, who's on the panel. Shout outs to you, babe. She handles the heart and the mind and all that other good stuff with all of her affirmations and, just exercises. I will tell you to put your hand on your heart and then put your other hand in your wallet. And if there's no money there, there is no time to do retail therapy. So with that, we're going to get started. I know 2020 was a big shock for a lot of us. In all seriousness, some of us lost jobs. Some of our jobs actually switched to virtual jobs. And so that caused an influx in our income. Some of us were in other industries where we were instantly impacted by, not having foot traffic and people not being able to come in. So that might have had an impact on our finances. So what I want to do is I want to just take a moment to just kind of level set and try to figure out how we can take control back of our finances in 2021 and how we can just use 2021 to be a launching pad for the next 5, 10, 15 years and to create that legacy. 2020 was a step back for a lot of us. And so my goal is to help us step forward. So what I wanted to do is I want to give us just 5 or 6 quick tips. Actually, it's 7. It's 7 quick tips. Don't ask me why I wanted to do 7 quick tips. Christy will tell you. I'm good with just 1 tip, being an ace on my line, but Christy's a 7. So I'll do 7 quick tips for us. So the first question is, does thinking about your finances send a shiver up your spine? Like, does it cause any anxiety? Do you have any unwell feelings when thinking about your finances? If so, one of those things is you might just be afraid of your money. It might just be that there is no real direction to your money. And so what I want to do is I just kind of want to give us some tips very quickly on how we can take control of our money, how we can not be afraid of our money, how we can start to invest our money and save our money and just really put our money in its place. Thing number 1, begin with the destination in mind. Stephen Covey wrote a book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and this was his first habit. And I truly believe that this works for your finances as well. It's begin with the destination in mind. Knowing where you want to go in the next year, next 5 years, next 10 years with your finances is beyond critical. Like, it is of the utmost importance. So you should take a day and just sit down and envision. You don't have to do any planning, but just envision like what you want this next, if we're talking about 2021, what you want this next year to look like for you financially. So when the clock strikes midnight, December 31st, and we're about to reach this new year, 2022, what would you like to say that you accomplished financially this year? Is it, I want to establish an emergency fund? Is I want to have X amount of dollars in my emergency fund? Is it, I want to have this amount, really paid off, this amount of debt paid off? Like, do I have 3 credit cards that I can pay off this year? Can I pay off my Macy's bill? Like, what does that look like? And so just take a moment and just envision your financial future for this year, and also envision your financial future for the next 5 years. So if the clock strikes midnight, December 31st, 2026, there we go. I did the math in my head. What does that look like for you? And then do the same thing for the next 10 years. So start to envision your money, because what's going to happen is, as we get to our next tip, which is don't be afraid of your bills, you will start to figure out, okay, well, as I'm not afraid of my bills and I'm starting to do this budget and I'm starting to do this envisioning, like, those 2 things work hand in hand. So you might stop going to Chick-fil-A, right? Unless you have a gift card. You might stop, spending the money at Macy's and doing the retail therapy. Once you know, like, this is where I'm headed, everything else has to fall into place. I liken it to personal training, right? So we all have to make choices. If one of our goals this year was to get healthier, we make choices. So I might not go to Chick-fil-A because I have a weight loss goal in mind. I might not, go to a really nice steak restaurant because I have a weight loss goal in mind. It's the same deal with your finances. If you have a financial goal in mind and you say, okay, well, I want to pay off these 3 cards by the end of the year, then, you'll allocate your money to other places, back to those, from other places back to those cards that you're trying to pay off. So having a destination in mind helps with not being afraid of your own bills. Take 1 day and just envision. Don't do any planning. But then take the next day, sit down with your bills and figure out, okay, well, this is how much I pay for childcare, or this is how much I pay for, my rent. This is how much my utility bills normally are. Like, figure those things out for yourself, and then figure out what you have in excess, and then use that excess to start fueling some of your goals. So take a day to envision, like, don't do any planning, and then take another day to actually sit down and start just planning your personal finance. Like, you don't have to plan like your investments and things like that, but really start to plan your personal finance. Like, how can I take care of my bills? And then what do I have left over? Speaking of those leftovers, A lot of times we get leftovers and we go to Chick-fil-A, or a lot of times we have leftovers and we go and we splurge. But make sure that you are saving money every month. So once you figure out your bills, start to save your emergency fund. I tell everyone, if we don't have an emergency fund right now, a good emergency fund, Dave Ramsey says $1,000. I like to say about $1,500. What you want to do is make sure that you have enough money in an account someplace with quick access so that if you get 4 flat tires, you can replace those tires and keep it moving without using any debt. Right now, about 33% of Americans don't have an emergency fund at all, and about 66% of Americans don't have a fully funded emergency fund that could take care of them for the next 3 to 6 months. So you want to get both of those things so you're not in one of those two numbers. So what you have to do is you have to figure out what your bills are and then make a plan to start saving money every single month. And this is for emergencies before we start investing, before we start doing anything else. Make sure that you have that, because if you don't have that, and the other thing is before you start paying off debt or really trying to, aggressively target your debt, go ahead and set up at least that small emergency fund first. Because if you start targeting your debt and you start paying off, your Visa bill or whatever that is, and you don't have an emergency fund, you are 4 flat tires away from going back into debt, right? So you want to make sure that you are aggressively targeting an emergency fund first. Get that squared away. So like just the 4 flat tire fund, like whatever that looks like, or car repair fund, get that squared away and put into a separate account, and then target your debt. So then start paying off, anything that you have to pay off. And with that, the next thing is plan for vacations and large purchases ahead of time. 2020 stopped us from traveling. If you are a travel head like me, I love to go places. I love to see new things. And I really miss the beach. I really miss, I've got family in the Caribbean, and I really miss just being able to go and hang out with them, right? But it stopped us from traveling. So in 2021 or in 2022, when the world kind of opens back up, you want to make sure that you have travel money. Or if, purchasing a new car is important to you, you want to make sure that you have enough to either purchase the car outright or put a great down payment on it so you're not in debt for a long time. With that being said, you need to start planning for vacations and large purchases ahead of time. A lot of us finance fun. I'm going to pause there and say that again. A lot of us finance fun, and that is not a good thing. So if you're thinking about, hey, I want to travel or I want to go to this destination, jumping to your credit card isn't necessarily the best way to pay it off. Now, if you're going to charge the card and then pay out, for the airline miles and then pay it off instantly, yada, 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 and you're sophisticated enough to do that, more power to you. But I'm talking to those people that are, hey, I can't necessarily afford it, but all my girlfriends are going to the Bahamas now that it's open, and I want to go too. That's the person that I'm speaking to. I want to speak to the person that is putting that money on the card and then figuring it out later. Let's not do that. If we know that we want to travel in 2022, or if we know that we want to travel at the end of 2021, let's start planning for that now. We've got 10 months to do it. So let's just figure out how much we need to set aside in a travel fund, or how much we need to set aside in a large purchase fund. And that's separate from your emergencies, right? So the emergency fund stays there. And then you might want to, you're not even might want to, you're going to want to have a separate fund for large purchases that are coming, because those aren't emergencies. And so, if the trip to the Bahamas comes up and your girlfriend say that they want to go, don't deplete your emergency fund taking the trip to the Bahamas and then get 4 flat tires when you come back and have to, make some adjustments. You want to make sure that you are doing those things in the appropriate order. Then we got the piggy bank. Make your investments wisely. Investing in your future is so important for your family, for yourself, and you want to make sure that you are seeking help from a licensed financial advisor, someone that can actually walk you through these things as far as your investments. Because a lot of times we get a lot of information from Facebook. So, oh man, everybody's buying GameStop right now. Let me go in and, jump in there, and everybody sold that GameStop purchase. So you're jumping in, it's too late and you're losing money out there. You want to make sure that you're making your investments wisely. You also want to make sure that as you're starting to build your emergency fund, you're putting that someplace where you can actually get to it. Because a lot of times people will say, well, I want to invest and I want to grow my emergency fund. So they put $2,000 inside of the market. The market has a down day, down month, down whatever. And now that $2,000 is looking like 1,800 or looking like 1,600. So you want to make sure that you're making the appropriate investments based on where you want to be. So based on those goals that you set, early on in step one, that's how you can make sure that you're making the right investments. Number 6 is consider getting a special account for Christmas and other events, right? So we talked about travel, we talked about large purchases, but we also know that Christmas is coming. And I say this all the time. I see way too many people that are financing Christmas. I'm sorry, somebody's got to mute. I see too many people that are financing Christmas. I see too many people that are financing just the holiday season, the holiday travel. So you might want to consider getting a special account or getting in a group that talks about saving for Christmas. And put away a little bit each month, just like we used to do. Like we used to put stuff on layaway and now we put stuff on credit, right? So that Christmas is coming. You have kind of an idea that, maybe it's the PlayStation 6 that's going to come out at the end of the year or whatever that looks like, or maybe you need to buy PlayStation 5 games now that you bought the PlayStation 5 last year. Start putting money away so that you have, like if you start now with $100, by the time Christmas rolls around, you have $1,000 to spend on Christmas, and it doesn't necessarily have to come out of your pocket. It definitely doesn't have to come out of your emergency fund. It's something that you can start to plan for now that will, allow you to breathe just a little bit easier when December rolls around. Number 7 is of the utmost importance, is get started now. 2021 doesn't have to be another year like 2020. 2020, we got hit with all kinds of just haymakers from the left, from the right. Like we didn't know if the world was going to be open. We didn't know if our jobs were going to be open. And a lot of us we spent money because we were shook, or we made financial decisions because we were shook, or we made financial decisions because we had way more time and we thought that we could, time the market or whatever we did. But 2021 can be the year where we start to really sit down and put pen to paper and start protecting our legacies, start figuring out things, start working towards those financial goals that we're going to set. And if we start in February, we still have one day to go in February, right? So if we start now, we have 10 whole months worth of action that we can take. And we want to make sure that we're taking action. So with that being said, one of the things that you want to do is make sure that you're rethinking your finances and being a little bit more patient with yourself. You want to make sure that you try to do at least one of these tips one at a time. And then as you start to master budgeting, as you start to really budget every month or whatever you're doing, as you start to invest in your emergency fund or put your emergency fund to the side, then move on to the next and keep making sure that you're repeating the process until you've mastered all the tips. If you need further assistance, it could be beneficial that you hire a financial planner to, help guide you through the details. And here are just the tips kind of listed out in list format if you wanted to take a quick screenshot or take a quick picture of them. There's 1 through 4. And here are 5, 6, and 7. Thank you all so very much for having me. If you need any more help or you want to talk about this just a little bit more, you can always reach me at 757-886-0829. Like I said, we're Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services located right here in Newport News. And you can also reach us at legacybuildersins.com. So go to our website, connect with us on Facebook. I do a Facebook Live at least twice a month called Financial Wellness Wednesdays, where we talk about things like this. We talk about what are some of the great books to read? What are some of the best podcasts to listen to? So we talk through some of this stuff on Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services, either on the website or connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, all of the social media platforms.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for that information. That was quite a bit as well. So this one spoke to me. You mentioned retail again, and you know, I had already
Didn't want to beat you up. I'm not trying to beat up anyone.
And that's okay, because I'm sure I'm not the only one. But I will say that there was a lot of information that you unpacked, and that I want to just recap first. Own your bills, right? That's the thing. We have to own our bills. We can't run from them. I used to always say I only go to the mailbox once a month because the bills are in there, so they can just sit in there. It's fine.
They can just chill out.
They just hang out. I mean, I know when they gotta be, when they're due, so just hang out. Save the trees. Recycle. Plan for vacations. I am the person, I will be honest, and some of you can raise your hand if you like. I am the person who's like, oh, I'll just put all the fun on the credit card. We'll pay it later. Oh, let's just get another credit card because I have more fun coming up. We'll pay
right,
that.
and we'll roll the balance over, and we'll roll the balance over, and it snowballs.
Yes, and
let it snowball.
It'll be fine. But there's a lot of truth to everything that you said, and so I do appreciate that. Of course, if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A. I want to make sure that we get as many questions as we can, because this is a big piece. You know, in growing up, there's a few topics that were off limits when we were growing up. You know, sex was one of them. Was one of them. Finances were one of them, especially in our community, right? We really don't ask your mama how much she brought home. Don't ask your dad if they had extra money. And we never really got a chance to really understand the power of money and what it can do and cannot do, especially from a FICO score or from a credit rating. So I'm sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but that was our experiences. So it's very important that we in our community not only are educated, but then we can educate the generations that come behind us.
I learned that working at a bank. So I won't mention what bank I worked at, but I learned that working at a bank. So we all have checking accounts. We've had checking accounts for years. So we've had checking accounts for years. And I noticed that bankers just weren't tripping up over themselves to talk to me when I was, just starting out. Like, nobody really wanted to let me know, like, hey, this is the account that you should open, or have you thought about investing, or have you thought about retirement, things like that. And then when I took the job at the bank, I realized that truly your bankers want to work with those people with more investable assets, right? So a lot of times, if you didn't get it at home and you don't have the assets, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get the financial literacy at school, definitely, but you're also not going to get it out here in the world. So you have to be more cognizant on trying to make sure that you stay financially educated and financially literate.
Absolutely. So we do have a question in the chat, a few of them. Can you talk about long-term care? What's the importance if you're in your 60s? If you're a little bit older, what's the importance of long-term care?
Okay, so long-term care is something that you want to make sure that you're looking into. The older you are, unfortunately, the more, not really expensive, but the more of an investment it's going to be. Long-term care insurance allows you to make sure that anytime that you are hospitalized or need like what we call long-term care. So if you can't do 5 of the 7, and I'm not going to bore you with like what the daily functions are, but if you can't do 5 of the 7 daily functions, long-term care insurance will make sure that you have care. So somebody to come out to the house, or we know that being in a nursing facility or an assisted living facility is expensive. Long-term care insurance helps with those things, as does, it in a mix with like Medicare and things like that.
Yeah, I think it's really important because oftentimes, and I will just go ahead, none of you, this is me all on my island by myself. None of you would do this. But oftentimes I will tackle debt, pay off that credit card that I've been using for fun. And I'm like, oh, wait, it's empty. Let me go retail shopping therapy. And then I start the cycle all over again. So is it safe to say that discipline is a part of financial planning and really
discipline is a huge part of it. Just like people that I can tell you that, for me, weight was my yo-yo, right? So lose 20 pounds, like, great, I can go out and I can have, XYZ meals. And then the next thing you know, I put on 20 pounds or I put on the COVID-20. And so now I'm working to get the weight back off. The same with your finances. It can be a yo-yo. You can pay off 5 or 6 credit cards and then you walk through Macy's, you're triggered and it's like, okay, let me go ahead and put this on credit. So you have to be sure that you're disciplined. You have to I recommend cutting them up. Just go ahead and physically getting rid of them. Do not close the account because you need the accounts to stay open. And if it's one of those accounts, there are ways to get around it, but don't close the account. Make sure the account stays open. And maybe you just put them in a drawer and you use them once every 6 months and then pay it off immediately so that you can keep your credit score high. If you're looking to do things like buy a new home or refinance a home, you need those long credit lines. So I wouldn't tell you to close the account ever, but make sure that whatever balance you carry is paid off by the end of the month. Absolutely. There's no question about that. That is sound. If you're going to use credit, it has to be paid off by the end of the month.
Gotcha. Or I've seen where people have froze it, stuck it in a box in a block of ice. I just take the ice out and stick it back in the fridge. The sink.
Or you remember the number. I'm not going to say like my wife, but some people who remain nameless remember the number. So even if it's gone, it's still there.
I love her. That's why we get along. It's only like 16, 17 numbers to remember.
Right.
Just spit it off. You use it enough, you remember it. All right. So there was a comment that said, thank you for the tip on handling the emergency fund, tackling that before you tackle the debt. This person has already been paying off a lot of debt, but she does appreciate that tip. Finally, the next question that we have is, what advice would you give regarding life insurance policies or wills, or having such documents support generalization wealth, or maintaining generational wealth assets such as real estate? What advice would you give us as we look at generational wealth?
Number one, as far as life insurance is concerned, have some. That's number one. GoFundMe is not life insurance. I can't say that enough. That is a Facebook meme, but it is one of the true ones. GoFundMe is not life insurance. Life insurance has absolutely, it has, all of them have their uses. I was talking to someone yesterday about the difference between term and permanent, because one of the things that, so you read off a bunch. Thank you so much for reading off a bunch of my licenses that I carry. But one of the licenses that I carry is my life and health license, which means that, and I represent a company that sells a lot of life insurance, and we sell all different types. So that means that I can sell you permanent, and I can sell you term, or I can sell you universal, or I can sell you a variable product. And all that means is I can find the best solution for you. Too often we have people that only specialize in one type of something, one type of vehicle, and they will tell you that this is the best vehicle for you. So if they only sell term, they'll put you in a 100-year term and, like, this is the greatest thing ever. If they only sell permanent, they will sell you some whole life insurance that they're getting a huge check from. And they are just, to them, every problem is a nail. They say when you're a hammer, every problem's a nail, and sometimes you need a screwdriver. That's what this is. So I recommend having the life insurance, having a good mixture of permanent and term, or having mostly term, or having all term. Just whatever stage of life you're in is what is going to be most beneficial to you. As far as the other investments, absolutely. Generational wealth is predicated on you being diversified, number one, and having just money in the market growing at compound interest. So compound interest, Einstein actually said, was the 8th wonder of the world. And that means that if I give you $1 today and I put it someplace that is going to gain interest every day, in a year's time, it might be $1.15. In 10 years time, it might be $5. Like whatever that interest rate is going to dictate. So anywhere that you can make an investment that is a wise investment, that you have, done the research on, that about, find places to put that money and leave it and grow it as compound interest, so that, in 18 years, I've got a 3-year-old. So in 18 years or 15 years, when he gets ready to go off to college, that investment that I made now, it might actually pay for his college in, 15 years or so.
So let me piggyback on that, because there's a question that was asked, was regarding an investment of specific question, investing $2,000 into a Roth IRA. If you're already at the age of 62 and you're working part-time, they want to have access to that emergency fund, or use it as emergency funds if needed. But what options are there for investing $2,000 in a Roth when you're at that age?
So if I'm hearing this correctly, they want to have access to it as an emergency fund. If that's the case, I'm going to put a pin in that and stop there and say, take that $2,000 and put it in the nearest Wells Fargo, Bank of America, you know, some credit union, some banking checking account, someplace, because you're going to need access to it. Anytime that you want to have a fund, you want to make sure that it can take advantage of what the compound interest that we talked about. And that works both ways. So if 2020 is a good year for my investment, I might have $2,010. But if 2021 is a bad year for my investment, I might have $1,800 or $1,600. And so you never want to speculate with money that you want to use, especially right away for an emergency. So my recommendation is if you have $2,000 or $5,000 or $1,000, you put it, and you want to use it for emergencies, you put it in a place where you can have access to it. Point blank, period. Not a Roth IRA. Don't put it in the market. Just take it and find someplace safe for it, because your time horizon means, and so your time horizon just means like the amount of time that you're going to need to get into it. Your time horizon means that you're going to need access to it. So you could be 22, not 62. You could be 32. Whenever you need to get to that money, if you need to get to that money right away, your age doesn't make a difference. You need to get to that money. So put it in an account where you can access it. Point blank.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. So should we have life insurance policies beyond our employer's provided plan?
Absolutely. So 2020 should teach you nothing else but have something outside of work, because you might not be working there. Layoffs are at an all-time high. The shipyard just laid off a bunch of people yesterday or demoted a bunch of people yesterday. I saw that on the news. So you want to make sure that you have something outside of work. I recommend having a 3 to 5 year recovery plan. So it's great if you have something at work, but most jobs are only going to give you 1 to 1.5, maybe 2 times your income on a life insurance plan. So if you're making $100,000, your life insurance plan is going to be $200,000 at the most, right? So you want to make sure that you have something, and that's great, that's phenomenal, but you want to make sure that you have another $3,000 to $5,000 someplace else in life insurance if you make $100,000, so that if something happens to you, your family doesn't have to immediately pack up the house and downsize because they're depending on your income. So if you have someone that's depending on your income, you want to make sure that you have a 3 to 5 year recovery plan, so that in the event that something happens to you, Johnny doesn't have to quit his soccer, you know, Susan doesn't have to stop whatever Girl Scouts or whatever she's in, and you don't have to pack up and move. Like, your kids can have their same friends, they can keep going to the same school, and it's not because something happened to you that, you know, your lifestyle has to change. So have something outside of work, point blank, period.
And then finally, how many credit cards should one have? This is not my question, by the way. But how many should one have? Especially when you're being told that you have too much credit.
I don't know anyone that has been told that they have too much credit. I know people that have been told that they have too much debt. So if you have a bunch of open lines with no balances on them, I don't see, because your credit score is going to look at the amount of debt that you have versus your income. That is one of the things that when a bank is going to give you a loan for your home, they're going to look at. Your credit scoring is going to look at the percentage of debt that is currently in use. So if you sign up for Credit Karma, you'll see that sometimes going to Chick-fil-A can cause your credit score to do this. If you put that last $10 on that Chick-fil-A card, and that causes you to go from a 20% usage to a 22% usage, that could cause your credit score to go down 4 or 5 points. And then when you pay that off, it'll go back up those 4 or 5 points. So you want to make sure that you are carrying, I say, 0 balances on all those cards, but you want to make sure that if you're not carrying 0 balances, those balances are low.
So I'm going to think about you every time I go to Starbucks and pull out my credit card and realize that I just changed my score.
I'll give you one better. If you go to Starbucks, use cash.
Okay.
So this is one of the things that I tell people all the time, and I got this, I believe, from Dave Ramsey. So when you're psychologically, and you know, Christy will attest to this, there's a pay mechanism. So if I give you $20, anybody ever had $20 just riding around with them forever because they didn't want to break it? So you go to Chick-fil-A, you go to wherever, you're not spending that 20 that you got in your pocket, you'll swipe the card. So what happens is there's a pain mechanism in your brain that says, if I give you this 20, it will cause me to feel some type of pain because I'm going to get $17 back. It's not going to be the same 20, but I can give you my card and I can get the item and not feel anything until I get ready to pay that bill. And by that point, it's too late. So when you go someplace, use cash. Use cash. You'll feel the pain and you'll say, you know what? I don't need to upsize this number 2. I just need the, I just need the sandwich and keep it rolling.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And I will say I've never bought anything for $3 at Chick-fil-A, so I will never get my $17 back. It's usually like $8.95.
For a sandwich and a drink, it's $18. I'm like, what happened here?
Absolutely. So listen, I have my pen in hand because only thing I can think about is I need your telephone number so I can call you, and your Cash App so I can just send you money and pretend like it never existed so you can invest it into whatever you're doing. So what is your contact information so we can reach you?
Okay, easiest way to reach me is 757-886-0829. That is the 757.
Okay.
757-886-0829. That's the direct number to my office. You can reach out to me you can connect with me on Facebook. It's Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services. Legacy Builders Insurance and Financial Services. We're on Facebook. You'll see the lion logo. You'll also see, like, if you scroll down to my videos, you should see me doing a bunch of videos. And we talk about this type of stuff. That's one of the easiest ways to reach out to me. Or you can email me. The email is Lester, my first name, Norwood, my last name, @allstate.com.
Well, Mr. Lester Norwood, very informative. I am truly appreciative of you sharing all the nuggets. And to all of our panelists, Dr. Norwood, Sanu Dieng, Lester Norwood, thank you so much for imparting all of this information and wisdom on us. There are so many who are still on this call, so I'm so grateful that you have spent time with us today and really learning a little bit about what services are out there for us, especially in this difficult time as we work through the pandemic. I want to take a moment of personal privilege just to say thank you to the Denbigh Alumnae chapter for your fortitude. And all of us know what fortitude is all about. So about your fortitude, for the courage to walk through. So I thank you for that. I thank you for your vision, for being visionary leaders in our community, in our organization, for creating such a platform that was so needed and so many of us needed to hear about and really understand. We needed to be able to understand how we need to release some of the stress that we have in our lives. We need to be able to understand how we can help support from a financial, from a mental stability perspective, not only ourselves, but others. And then of course, making sure that our finances are taken care of in this pandemic as we have to transition from the normal, what we consider normal. I will say that I am just honored and blessed to be a part of not only such a great organization, but a part of this moment right now in history as you ladies are making history in sharing the importance during this difficult time. It is truly an honor that I was here. And so I thank you for allowing me to be a moderator. Thank you to everyone for being on this call. At this time, I'm going to step back and turn it over to the president of the Denbigh Alumnae chapter, Sarah Kristen Stansel.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. I just want to start off by thanking all of our participants who have joined us today to collect the information from these experienced panelists that have presented information to us today. To the panelists, first of all, to Sora Angel Brown for taking the time today to serve as our moderator for this event. Thank you so much for just your time, your energy, and your spirit today. It definitely helped to move the program along. To Dr. Christy Norwood, my soror chapter member, thank you so much for giving us your strategies and the tips to help us with our mental stability during this time, because this has affected so many of us in many different ways. Some, unfortunately, more negatively than positively. So I definitely appreciate your time and the information that you shared and the wonderful presentation that you showed us today, and the resources as well. So thank you to Soror Sanu Dieng. Thank you, and just for what you've provided for us today, giving us insight on domestic violence. I know many of us probably were not aware or hadn't thought about the different types of domestic violence that exist. You know, you just hear domestic violence, and I know for me, my mind automatically shifts to a relationship, you know, between a man and a woman, or, you know, a same-sex relationship. It doesn't really, I never thought about how it went through, you know, could go to family members or just peer-to-peer relationships. So thank you for all of the information that you shared and the resources that you shared. And thank you to Transitions for everything that you do for the domestic violence victims who come through your program. Amazing work, so thank you. And last but not least, to Mr. Lester Norwood, something that is very, we always need financial information, but especially now dealing with the pandemic. So many of us have been affected negatively with maybe losing jobs, or even if you haven't lost your jobs, your expenses have probably changed. If you're working from home, you may be paying higher utility bills, your grocery bills have grown. So just to get those financial resources and those tidbits that you provided to us today, the talk about the life insurance, that really spoke to me, because I know from my own personal experience, I had not thought about life insurance so much until we got into COVID, and I started seeing so many people in my age group who were actually passing away from COVID, and seeing the GoFundMe's being sent in text messages and being posted on Facebook. So it really is an eye opener to just think about how to prepare and, you know, try not to leave a burden on those who are left behind. So it doesn't matter your age, you know, that's something to start thinking about. So I really, really appreciate that information that you provided to us today, and all of the resources that you all gave. To the Public Relations Committee, Sora LaGuana, and to the rest of the committee members, I just want to thank you all for having the vision to put this together, because as Sora Angel stated, this is much needed. This is something that everyone can benefit from. The mental, physical, and our financial thoughts and just our well-beings were stimulated today by the information that was shared on this webinar. So I definitely appreciate your vision, and thank you so much for taking the time to put this together. This was very powerful, in my opinion. So on behalf of the Denbigh Alumni Chapter, just thank you all for what you do. Keep doing what you do. Keep lifting our community up. Definitely, we need that. And of course, hopefully we will have some people reaching out to you. I know I'll probably be calling, definitely Mr. Norwood, I'll be calling you, because I want some information on that financial piece, because I need to get myself together. So thank you. Thank you all so much.
Thank you all, and we appreciate everything that you have done. And this concludes our Zoom meeting for today. And we just pray and continue to hope that everyone who are in attendance today got everything that they needed to get out of this event. And we are so excited for what's to come for you, because keep your head up, as they said before. Don't give up. Just keep pushing ahead and keep striving towards the mark. So we thank each and every one of you, and everyone have a good day today.
Thank you.